You're listening to Bigfoot Society podcast, hosted by our captain, Jeremiah Byron, where it's all Bigfoot all the time. Have you ever had the urge to do more, to be more? Now you can by joining Bigfoot Society on the Patreon. Get ad-free episodes and even member-only episodes. Take part in movie night and even live video chats. Interact behind the scenes with Jeremiah and other Patreon members like me, Slaya. The powerful podcast goes on, and you may contribute a verse in our Patreon community. Carpe diem. Seize the day, Bigfooters, and make your lives extraordinary.
Welcome to Bigfoot Society. If you have Bigfoot activity to report from the same areas discussed in this episode, please reach out to me directly after this episode. And if you'd like to be on the podcast to discuss a personal Bigfoot encounter, please reach out to me directly at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Do you wish there was more Bigfoot Society to listen to every week? Well, there is now. If you become a supporting member over at Patreon, you get a special members-only episode every single week on Wednesdays, and sometimes even more episodes. Head on over to patreon.com/The Bigfoot Society. And now let's get on with the show. All right, Bigfoot Society, we've got the privilege of talking to Robin Haynes today. Robin is an experiencer that has had almost 60 years of experience regarding Bigfoot, and I've been wanting to talk to Robin for a very long time, so I'm very excited to have Robin on the show finally. But Robin, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Your name has come up multiple times from my listeners in different ways, and just one of the names that they're like, man, you really should have Robin on to chat with her and have her share what she's experienced. So we're definitely making that happen tonight. But Robin, I'm going to go ahead and kind of pass things over to you and kind of bring us back to how this all started and how you started having these connections with, I'm going to say with Bigfoot, but, I apologize if there's a certain way that you refer to them as well.
Yeah, different groups want to be called different things. There's some that are Sasquatch, some that are Sukaloo, some that are Leashi. I mean, it just depends. I'm fine with any of them. They tend to some groups get a little bit agitated when you call them Bigfoot, but then like the ones in Michigan, they didn't care, but they read your intent and they knew my intent. So if I called them a Bigfoot, or I'd say the Foots or whatever, they didn't get too upset about it just because they're able to read you. I mean, they know your heart, they know your intent. And so they never took it personally, but there's some that get a little funny about it.
Absolutely. So bring me back to the first memory you have of how this all came into your life, and what was that like for you?
I was really young. For me, and I said this on other shows too, but it's true. I never realized that not everybody had them around them. I had no way of knowing that because I was so tiny. Like I can remember being, as far back as 3 and 4 years old and looking out the window and seeing their faces in the window. And then when I was like 4.5, 5, back then it was safe to let your kids be out to play. And at the end of my road, which was only like 3 or 4 houses down, there were woods and there was all these sand piles and you could ride your little tricycles up and down it or whatever, or dig and make sand castles in it. And I would go down there and I had 3 or 4 of them that would come out of the woods and just stand there and watch me. So for me, I was in complete ignorance that this was not normal. My life has never been a normal life. It's not been what everybody else's normal would be. The abnormal is the normal. And when they would, do the mind speak, I had no idea that not everybody did that. I didn't even know that's what it was called. I just knew that they would talk to me in my head. They would verbally talk to me as well. But it was easier to understand in my mind. It wasn't as grumbled and as deep and guttural, And they were just always around. I would be in grade school and I would go over to a friend of mine's house and she had several acres of land. I'd go over there and they would come out and they'd stand there and they would just watch me. And it was so crazy because like a year or two ago, one of my childhood friends that I used to hang around with quite a bit. You know, I don't ever remember my friends knowing a lot about him. A couple instances, but not a lot. And she happened to be on Facebook, and she joined one of the groups that I was in. And I saw that she was on there, and I thought, geez, I've been on here posting pictures of them and pictures of portals and talking. And, you know, now it's out, because I didn't even come public or talk to anybody about it other than close personal friends till I was in my 40s. And I thought, geez, now she's going to think I'm a nutcase, you know. And she messaged me privately, and she said, do you remember when you showed them to me? And this is somebody that I had not talked to in years. And she said, don't you remember when we were in grade school, you showed them to me? And I thought, you know what? I forgot all about that. I was just always so used to them being around, you know. And that's the thing, is I became more public, and I only went public because of their insistence, not mine. They wanted people to know the truth. And I had originally tried to reach out to find people. I thought, you know, the things that were going on in my world made no sense. I mean, it made sense to me, but it wasn't like everybody else's. So I did eventually reach out to try to find somebody that might be able to shed some light on what was going on. And then eventually that's when they wanted me to talk about them, and I went forward. But, you know, I was very much limited to what I would say to people, you know, and people would ask me, what about this? What about this? And I'm like, this was my normal. You're not understanding it. I didn't know that not everybody went out in the woods and had them following them around, or looked in their window, or heard them talking in their mind. Like, I grew up thinking it was normal. When I was young, I was like 5, 6 years old. I said to my mom and dad, I said, I want you to tell me about Sasquatch. I want you to tell me about the ETs, because these are all things I'm encountering. And they were like, we can't. We don't know anything about them. There were no books out there at that time. Patterson Gimlin hadn't come forward with everything yet. They said, we don't even know, you know, anything about them. They never said I was lying. They never felt I was, to my knowledge. They just thought I had an imaginary friend. But they did notice that things would happen. Toys outside would be moved, or there would be prints, you know, in windows, or I would say, Mom, look at, there's, you know, it's looking in. And then she'd turn around, of course, it would have been gone. But, you know, so those things would happen. As I grew up and my friends were around, things would happen that they would see too, that they couldn't explain. And that continued as I got older. I reached out, and I was very blessed. I found Bob Daigle from Michigan Bigfoot, who, as far as I am concerned, is my hero, because he was the first person that actually talked to me, and I could tell him, this is what's going on. And he acted like he believed me. And he introduced me to Igor Borstev. And Igor came out. He was supposed to stay a couple hours. He stayed 10 days because there was just too much activity, too much evidence that was there. And then when he left, he invited me to speak at the Scientific International Conference in Siberia. So I was flown out there, and I did that conference, and I came home, and I thought, okay, people actually want to know. Maybe this is safe. You know, I can tell people, and I can give them the information that because they've been teaching me things that my whole life. The things that I talk about, and the people, I work with a lot of people on this stuff, and the things that I share with people, I learned from the Sasquatch. I didn't pick it up out of a book. I didn't pick it up out of thin air. They taught me. I didn't go by anybody else's experiences, because I got it from them, you know. And so I came back from that conference thinking this is a good thing. And I spoke at a small conference in Michigan. And then the next thing I know, I have death threats and kidnapping attempts, and, you know, being threatened with physical harm, because if somebody were to kidnap me or whatever, they thought all the Sasquatch would come running in to rescue me. It doesn't work that way. Have they helped me? Yes. They literally have saved my life 5 or 6 times. So I will say that. But generally, that is not the rule. That's not going to get anybody what they want. And I just have always grown up with them around me. It doesn't matter where I go. They show up eventually. And so I've always tried to defend them in my own way. You know, I lived in Michigan, and I had, oh my gosh, so many of them there. Structures everywhere. I went out every night. They'd tap on my window of my bedroom, and I would go out, never took a flashlight, went out in my pajamas, sat on a log in the middle of the woods, and they would walk around me, and they would talk, and they would chatter and various things. And I did that for 4 or 5 years. I was out with them, interacting with them like that. But my house became like ground zero, where I really, excuse me, other than a few select people, Igor Borsteff, Bob Daigle, Joe Stewart, a couple other people, I let out there that I knew would never harm them. I wouldn't let people come to my house, because if anybody knew where they were, I was afraid someone would try to hurt them. And I just got very protective. And, then it got to where they had taught me enough things where they would send me to different areas. If there was a problem, one that was bothering people, I would get sent to a certain area. If there was really good ones over there that they needed the land blessed, I would go there. They taught me how to do the energy work and all of these various things. I'm not an expert. I will never, ever claim to be an expert. And my own personal belief is there are no experts. I know a lot of people that think they are, but we are never going to know everything about these beings. We're just not. We're blessed that they teach us what they do. So I never tell anybody I'm an expert. And I'm perfectly fine if somebody asks me a question and I don't know it. I have no problem saying I don't know the answer to that. I'll try to get it for you, but that doesn't mean I can. They make all the decisions. I get a lot of people that are like, well, tell them I'm going to be there, because I do mind speak fluently with a lot of different cryptids as well as other things. And they'll say, let them know I'm coming. Well, I can let them know you're coming, but I can't make them appear for you. I can't make them, step out and wave or shake your hand. I don't have that power. Nobody does. They pretty much do what they want to do, how they want to do it. They are, I worked on the genome project with Dr. Melba Ketchum, and, it was very difficult. I already knew what they were. I had asked them years ago what they were, and they had told me. And so now she does the study. I didn't know her before the study. And they were the ones that wanted me to find her and help her, which I did. And I will always give her 100% of my support, because she was right on money with all of it. A lot of the truth didn't come out about the study because we never got the opportunity to present it, because the haters just were so intense. It was just a matter of she threw up her hands and said, there's no point. They're not going to listen anyway. But yeah, I had turned in DNA samples from them. All that came back exactly what I knew them to be, Sasquatch. They've done so many crazy things, and every time I've moved, I'm like, oh, I'll probably never see them again. And yet there they are. They show up. The dogmen show up. I've had cat people show up, various different cryptids. I've not had a lot of bad experiences. I've had bad experiences. I've dealt with aggressive ones, and same with the dogmen, but there's more good than bad. I think people need to know that they are a type of people. They aren't our type of people, but they are a type of people. They have their own language. They have their own alphabet. They can read. They can write. They can do anything. Yes, they have abilities. They do. And that's hard to grasp. But when you physically see them do these things, I'm a person like a lot of people are, where not only do I want to hear about it, I want to physically see it. Well, I've been living with them around me for almost 60 years now, and I've seen it. I haven't seen everything, I'm sure. I'm sure they got more up their sleeves, but I've seen a lot. And it becomes harder and harder to say this isn't real when you're watching it. When they had several years ago, they'd always cloaked on and off, and everybody was fighting. It was the big fight at the time with everybody in the Bigfoot community was, do they cloak? Do they not cloak? And, I had seen things I couldn't explain. I had been out when I lived in Michigan, and I'm walking through the snow, and I'm watching 3 or 4 feet away from me footprints being made in the snow, but there's nothing there. Or walk around out in the woods, when it's fall time and the leaves are down, and I'm hearing footprints crunching in the leaves next to me. How do you explain that? You can't. And then people were arguing about it. And so I just said to them one day, I said, I just want the truth. That's all I want is the truth. Just what is this? And they explained it. They explained how they do it, which to me was incredible. It's simply not as difficult as what everybody seems to think it is. They are frequency and energy based. They work on a higher frequency than us and a higher energy, not like a physical run around the block energy, but energy that's within your body. Okay. And when you raise your frequency high enough, you can do a great many things. We can as well. Maybe not everything they can do, but we can do a lot. And so when they go, they can do a shimmer, which looks like the Predator effect, so kind of like that thick water thing that you saw in the movie Predator, or they can do a complete cloak. They do that by raising the frequency. If you look at a hummingbird, and a hummingbird goes to a bird feeder, and you see this hummingbird getting the nectar out of the bird feeder, all you see is the head, the beak, and the body. You never see the wings. You don't see the wings because the frequency or vibration is so fast as it's moving the wings, they become transparent. It's the same thing. If you ask them how they do it, they'll tell you they bend the light. They don't leave, they're right there. They just bend the light. The higher the frequency, the clearer they become. And so they can stand right there. I've had them stand next to me and I feel the pressure of a hand on my shoulder. And I've had them right within 10 feet of me and go from a physical form to a cloak. I mean, I've seen it. I've had witnesses with me that have seen it. And that's the other thing about me. If I was the only one that saw these things in my presence, I would think maybe there's something wrong with me, because I've seen some incredible things, just mind-blowing things. But I've had people with me, multiple people with me, researchers that are worth their weight in gold, and they've seen these things happen as well. So I'm okay with the people that doubt. It's all right. Everybody should have a little bit of doubt and, a little bit of discernment. I'm okay with that, because I know what I see. I know what I've witnessed. I know what I've experienced, and I had people, most people have been really good to me. I'm very blessed. The Bigfoot community, while I've had some haters, yes, and that's fine. Predominantly, people have been very gracious and kind to me, and I will be forever grateful for that. And so when I get the people that either don't want to just have a conversation or be respectful and say, hey, I don't believe you, and that's fine, they're entitled to their opinion, I don't worry about it. Because while they're over there doubting me and thinking of what they can say, I'm going to come home and I'm going to go out in the woods and I'm going to interact with them. So it's a win-win, So it's been a very, very good ride, so to speak. I moved from Michigan and I just had so much activity there my whole life. And then I moved to South Carolina. I was very concerned that the activity would stop. It absolutely did not stop. I've got 3 or 4 clans that come in and out of my property now, as well as dogmen. And I had dogmen in Michigan as well. And I'm in the process of moving to Texas. And I've already got 3 or 4 clans that I'm working with there as well. And then I have some that are in other states. This last summer, it's been really busy because it's not just been the mind speak or remote viewing, because I can do all those things, but it's been more driving there and having the physical contact. And that's been really great. That just kind of solidifies what I already know. But the dogmen have been around me. There's a lot of people that say that the dogmen and the Sasquatch will not share territory. And in some areas that is true. But they're more often than not, they aren't going to be sitting around a campfire having dinner together, but they will share space. They did it in Michigan. I had 3 or 4 of them that were there. My son actually went out hunting one day, and a very small dogman pup came right up to me. It was sitting at the base of a tree, and it was really early in the morning. He fell asleep. He woke up, and it was standing right next to him. And then it ran off with its mom. But they've been pretty good. I have been called out to areas where aggressive ones are at, and did assist with that as to the best of my ability. The same thing with the Sasquatch. But there are more good ones than bad. It helps if you learn about their culture, learn about their ways of life, learn about their laws. They have their own laws. They have their own culture. All of these things that we do, it's just different from ours. Our words don't mean the same that theirs do. They tend to pick up a lot of ways from the Native Americans, which is fantastic. Different groups will have a different language. Some that were in Tennessee that had their language. I tried that language in Michigan. I got absolutely nowhere with it. They just said it wasn't theirs. Same thing in Texas. They have certain language that is not normal for the ones here in South Carolina, just like we do. I mean, we have various kinds of people. We have Chinese, we have Mexican, we have American, whatever. It's different, but we're all still people. And it's pretty much the same with them. You know, they have all different size, shapes, color. They're not all conial head. You know, one that I'm extremely close to and interact with on a regular basis, his head is so very much human. It's unbelievable, other than it's covered in very, very short hair. And he's come up and just walked right out of the tree line and walked up to me and got within 10 feet, you know, and he stood there for several minutes and then he finally cloaked right in front of me. So, but they are in every different color. And just because they're white does not mean they're old, does not mean they're an albino. Do they get gray hair as they get older? Yeah, they do. Are there albinos? Yeah, just like with our people. But they can have white hair just because they have white hair. All the different skin tones, just like we have several different skin tones, they are the same way. You know, they're very much as individualized as we are. They're a type of people. It's just a different culture. And, you know, it's kind of frightening, I think, for people because the powers that be have really put it into our heads that these things don't exist. And there's reasons that they've kept them quiet. You know, I don't know all of them. I know quite a few of them. But the reality is it doesn't mean they're not there. And they are. And they've been living amongst us, you know, for like 15,000 years. They are coming out more now. About every 3 or 4 years, they make this big attempt to try to get people to accept that they're there. And it usually hasn't gone very well. So, but they are letting people see them more and more now. They pick and choose who they want to interact with. They know your heart better than you will ever know it. They go by your frequency. They go by your energy. They go by your heart, if it's pure. And they go by your intent. You cannot pull anything over on them. It is impossible. They're like a lie detector. I have one that I work with a lot. And if I'm having a bad day or if there's something wrong, he knows about it every time and will get hold of me to see if I'm okay. Like it's a riot. I've been doing this all this time and they still never cease to amaze me.
Robin, some really fascinating things you brought up there. I do have a few questions for you, if that's okay.
Sure.
Just been making
Absolutely.
some notes as I've been listening here. What do you think the main reasons that you've come across that the Sasquatch people are being kept quiet are?
I think, first of all, they can't be controlled. The government can't control them. They're not going to be able to. You're talking about something that can literally pick up a car and throw it across a football field. The strength is immense. They're highly intelligent. They are masters at hiding. Plus, they have the cloaking ability. And that's before you even get into the other abilities that they have that we can't match. And so there's that. But I think, and there's some that I won't go into just because they're really dark and it's better off left unsaid. But another thing, and this is a big one, is our forests and our national parks bring in a great deal of revenue every year. Okay? Our country depends on that revenue. If people were to know that they are out there and there really isn't a way to safeguard and protect people, who'd want to be out there? And they're not all dangerous. Just because they're out there doesn't mean it's unsafe. And quite honestly, knowing what I know about is out there in that world, they are the least of the problems. You know, I mean, have they done things that have harmed humans? Absolutely. You'll never hear me say that they are all good because they're not. But neither are our people. You know, I have been out in the woods by myself and had a clan out there, and I am far less afraid of them than I am if I go out in the woods with 100 of our people that I don't know. That will scare me to death. They, you know, I feel safer with them. But that is, you know, a big concern for the government. I mean, it changes revenue, and you're talking about a very difficult situation for them to protect anybody. And I think, too, they don't, you know, I think they need to know more about their culture and their ways of life because people get frightened. I work with people all over the world. Okay. I eventually opened my own business for it. But before that, I've worked with people for over 40 years. And I've got people that I work with everywhere. And I get a lot of people that call me and they're like, I have PTSD. And I said, okay, please, let's take it back. Let's walk through it. And maybe I can help explain it and see what we can come up with. And they're like, well, it yelled at me and it waved my arms in the air. And I said, did it physically touch you? No. Did it zap you? No. Well, what did it do? It yelled at me and it waved its arms. First off, for people that aren't aware of having any contact with them, it would be terrifying. And my sympathy goes out to them because they look so different than us. We're equally as terrifying to them because we look like freaks of nature because we have no hair. So, but it is frightening. But when you break it down, people need to realize if you're in the military and you're waving your arms in the air, it's a surrender. But yet when they do it, it's violence. The other thing is we assume, which is our first problem, we assume when they yell, they're being violent. They can do it for a lot of reasons. They can do it to alert other ones that are around because they seldom are by themselves. They can do it to stop you from walking into an area where something else is going on. I've actually had them, try to stop me because I was going into an area that there was a bear at for my own protection. I know of several cases where they have stopped people from walking into a situation that they could have gotten hurt, or walking into a situation where possibly their children are at. We think we have the market on being protective parents. It is nothing compared to them. They're higher energy, higher frequency, which means all their emotions are at a higher level than ours will ever hope to be. So they love deeper. They get mad harder. If they're going to be sad, it's going to be at a harder level. Every emotion is at a much stronger level than what ours are. So not saying that there aren't some out there that have been aggressive to people, because we know that that's happened. But the point is that not everything they do when they interact with us is an act of aggression. I can understand why people get scared. 100% I can understand that. And I'm very empathetic to that. I've had them where, they've come up. I had one that actually ran from the back of my woods. I'd walked out there and he ran all the way up and then got about 20 feet and just stopped and stared at me. And when he was coming through those woods, I'm not going to lie, I was nervous. And I'm thinking, now he's charging me. Why? And then he stopped and he was fine. I was in Texas, in the lower part of Texas years ago, with someone helping him set up a research site. And there was a bunch of them that were there that were highly aggressive. And the clan leader bluff charged me. And he bluff charged me when he came at me. There were children there, our children, not my children, my friend's grandchildren. And I was trying to keep them safe and get them out of there. So I held my ground because I'm a mom first before anything. It's the only thing I was thinking about was protecting these kids. And he bluff charged me and he got close enough. I was standing next to a palmetto bush that was like waist high. He leveled the palmetto bush and went so close to me, it blew the hair off my shoulder, blew my hair back. So I totally get being frightened. I do. I don't mean to say anybody shouldn't feel the way they feel, but it's not always being aggressive. There are ways. They don't do anything without a reason. We don't always understand the reasons. It's like people get hold of me and they're like, okay, how can I go out and interact? And I'm like, quit chasing them around. You don't want to be chased. They don't want to either. Go out, have a bonfire, laugh. When you laugh, it raises your frequency. That draws them in like you would not believe. Cook some food over the bonfire. Let them come to you. Or if you're going to go, let's say you have them on your property and you go out every day, make your pattern the same thing every day so they know what to expect from you, and let them work themselves around you. Don't you try to work yourself around them. Let them work themselves around you, but be respectful. If you have an area that's all structures, that's an area they frequent. Go on the outside circle of it. Don't mess with the structures. They're a form of communication, and a lot of those structures are highly charged with energy. So you have to be careful.
I have a question about that. Let's say you really might not know what you're doing and you go inside of, let's say, a structure where it's bent over tree saplings, a group of them, and you go inside it. Could there be potential health issues from that or things that arise?
It That's a yes and no question, actually.
Okay.
For the ones, number one, when they make those arches, if it's a big arch, they've used energy to bow it. That's why it doesn't break the branch or the tree. It looks like a natural bend. It's because they've used energy to do that. That energy that radiates off of them, because it does come off of them anyway, and that's due to the higher frequency. In a lot of these structures, they put energy into it. They help use the energy, helps to create them. And there has been times where you can put, little meters in there and it'll show you that it's raised. I know people that have put light bulbs in it and it's turned the light bulb on.
Really?
Prolonged exposure to something like that can harm you. To do it for a short term where you're just going to go in it for a minute or whatever, I don't see where that's going to hurt you that much. It's not prolonged, and it's not going to be intense enough. Some of them, they'll make the teepees. Everybody sees these teepees around and they're like, oh, this is where they're living. No, it's not. It's cute. You think they are, but that's not where they live. That's a temporary shelter, or they'll use that as fill it with enough energy where they can use it as a portal to go in and out. But just on a short term to pop in and out of that, I don't think you're going to have any problems. You may feel a little dizzy. If it's really highly charged, you might feel a little nauseated, but there shouldn't be any long-term effects unless you do that on a regular basis. And then it's like when you're around them, and a lot of people, there's, I'm not anybody special. Okay. A lot of people have encounters like I do. But when you have prolonged exposure to them, and this is important because a lot of people in this field of research get very sick. Mm-hmm. And we lose researchers every year. I am not saying it's from them. They cannot put physical illnesses in your body. I've had people ask me that too. No, they don't. That's not, it goes against their laws. It goes against their codes. But if you get a lot of energy off of them and you're interacting with them all the time, you can get sick. You really can, because it works on our bodies almost like a radiation would. And it has been proven time and time again that even deceased, if you took one of the, I think they call them a Geiger counter, and run it over them, it will set that off. It's because of the frequency and energy level that they have. It's not them trying to do anything. That doesn't work that way. Now, what I normally do when I'm out with them, and I've had them, get like 2 foot away from me, and that energy, it felt like a weighted blanket on top of me. It wasn't zapped. It just felt like a weighted blanket. And it can make you dizzy. And so, I've gotten to the point now where I'll tell them, you know what, my 3D body can't handle it. Like, you've got to pull it back. And when they pull it back, then it lets up and it's better. So I've tried to be really, and I fail sometimes, but I try to be really mindful when I'm out interacting with them. It's like, guys, you know what, I really need you to just pull it back. I'm happy to be out here with you, but my body isn't like yours. I can't do it. I'm a high frequency, high energy person. My frequency is much higher than a lot of people's. Although I will say this, with the energy shift that's going through, everybody's frequency is on the rise up, which is phenomenal. But I still have a 3D body. And it just, that high frequency that they radiate, it can cause some issues. But it's not done deliberately.
So I'm just going to talk through something out loud. So you're saying that humans, if we can raise our frequencies, it'll go up higher to where the Sasquatch are, which will allow us to maybe communicate, talk to them better. But you're also saying that right now our frequencies are raising by itself, maybe because of external things that are happening?
Yeah. We're never going to get the frequency that they have. They are so far above us, but ours is going to go up. That's why everybody keeps saying, everybody's going into 4D and 5D. They bypassed that a long time ago. But things are changing on our planet. It's a global thing. It's not a United States thing. It's a global thing. And there has been a shift that started back in March, and it's still progressing. And it is trying to raise everybody's frequency and energy. You raise your frequency, be happy. The highest frequency there is comes from your heart and is love. So, be kind to each other. Try to be happy. We all have days that we're depressed. I mean, realistically, that's normal. Even they do. But there's things that you can do. Do the energy work. Do the grounding. Do these things. Connect with nature. Do things that make you happy. The happier you are, the higher your frequency goes. Nobody's frequency stays at one level all the time. It bounces because our emotions bounce. But yeah, as ours go up, you start experiencing more. Okay. Perfect example. And I've had this tried and tested so many different times, and people are like, oh my gosh, it really worked. You know, we get people that have pictures. I have pictures, I have videos, I have all that stuff. And you look at a picture and somebody says, look at it, can't you see this, this, and this? And then another person looks at it and says, that's all pareidolia because there's nothing there. Okay. That happens to all of us. And sometimes it is pareidolia. It is. But it's not always. And what happens is the person that is seeing it, their frequency is higher. When your frequency is up, you start to see things on what I for lack of a better term, I made up this term because I know what else to call it. You see things on a paranormal spectrum. And by that, I mean you see things that you can't see because you're at a lower vibration. So when your frequency goes up, everything in your system changes, including what you see. So when you look outside right now, if you are not already 4 and 5D, you're going to see things a certain way. Once you go up to 4 and 5D and you look outside, you may see things that you didn't see before. You may see cryptids in the woods. You may see various things. You may see a portal or, you know, all these things. And I've got pictures of all these things that, you know, people have seen and are easily able to see them. And like my clients still get hold of me and they're like, I'm doing everything you told me to do and you're right. Now I'm seeing this and this and this. And then you'll be able to work on seeing an energy signature. An energy signature, you don't have to see the physical being. You can pick it right out of a photo because it just pops, but it's because you're at that higher frequency. As we stay in a 3-dimensional state, it only allows you to see so much. And that's really kind of what slows everybody down. And it's really sad to me because people fight so much over these bloody pictures. They just do. And even if it's a crystal clear photo, you've got half the people that will believe it, half that won't believe it. The bottom line is the person that took the picture is going to know what was there. People with a higher frequency may or may not. And like I said, there are photos that are definitely pareidolia, absolutely across the board. But not all of the ones that are claimed to be pareidolia are. And as this shift, as they call it, transpires, and it will, you know, according to the Sasquatch, it's going to go on for a full 2 years. The majority of the change will be the first year, which is what's going on now. But people are going to become more aware of these things. And they are. I mean, I get contacted by different people daily. And I'm not the only one. I am literally nothing special. There's other people that are just like me out there. There's thousands of them, hundreds of thousands of them. But it does change your perception and what you see. It's not a brainwashing thing. It's not that all of a sudden you convince somebody something's there that isn't. It is a physical thing that when your frequency goes higher, the more you're able to see and pick up on.
That does make a lot of sense. There's something you mentioned a while back. I don't want to push it, but I'm going to just bring it up to comment on it. You'd mentioned that something to the effect of there were dark things that were keeping things from happening. Now, I'm not saying what are those things, but I'm more commenting on if there are individuals that are very much focused on Bigfoot and, you know, maybe talking about it all the time and you know, out there in the public, do these individuals have to be, you know, maybe watching their back because there are dark things or
yeah, I mean,
you know.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's a really good thing to bring up because unfortunately, people don't realize how dark this gets. You know, when I started out as a kid, I didn't know not everybody played with them. You know, I would play and they would watch me. That's what we did. It wasn't like I was climbing all over them or anything like that. They would be within 10 to 20 feet and they would just watch me. You know, they were there all the time. I thought that was normal. I didn't realize it wasn't everybody's life experience. When I figured that out, I thought, okay, that's fine. I stayed quiet, only had certain friends, you know, and a little bit of family that knew about it. And it stayed that way. When I came into this, by the time I got to the Bigfoot research part where I was talking to people, I had noticed I was getting followed a lot. I had, you know, the SUVs with the dark windows. I had various things happen. I got ran off the road twice. and you couldn't see into the car because the windows were tinted, and these weird things that I didn't have an explanation for. I never tied it in to Sasquatch. I just thought it was a freak incident. When I moved to a certain area in Michigan, I was there, gosh, not even a month. The first one showed itself and walked into the backyard with my kids when we'd only been there not even a week. And within a matter of months, I had 4 to 5 helicopters that stayed above my house 24 hours a day. If I went to the store, it followed me. And I had a very dear friend of mine that was always welcome at my house and had interacted there before. And we would go to various other woods and go out. And she's like, they never stop. They follow you everywhere. I said, I know they do. It was ridiculous. Like, my kids for a while were frightened to be outside because the helicopters never stopped. And this went on for several years. But during that time, I had met somebody that had contacted me on Facebook, just wanting to know questions, nothing, that he couldn't have known. And he finally let me know that he was a retired police officer and that he wanted me to be aware that there were a group of men that were targeting women researchers, which I hate being called a researcher because I've never really tried to research them. I just have lived around them and lived with them. And that the plan was that they were going to bash, this is the words that I was told, bash these women's head in with a lead pipe so that when our brains oozed out on the ground, it would make the Sasquatch come in and then they could bag a Bigfoot. And so he wanted me to be aware of it, and they put the cop car at the end of my driveway. My kids had to stay home from school until, these men were caught. And so there is things like this. I've had the government come in and freeze my accounts. I've had them show up at my door. I have been followed. We get into this, and for me, I was never trying to get into any type of a club. I mean, I was just living my life, and they were my friends, and I would protect them, and I did a lot of things for them and with them, and other researchers were doing the same thing. They were not trying to relieve in research, they were trying to be experiencers as well. And these people were hunted like animals because they had the contact. And for people that can't get the contact, they think that's the greatest way to get it. It's not. Because at the end of the day, and I've had them save my life, 6 times now. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here. But at the end of the day, their culture, the laws in that culture, is they are not supposed to interfere with our people, and we are not supposed to interfere with theirs. So just FYI to everybody, trying to peg off somebody that's in the field to be able to get to their Sasquatch doesn't work. They are going to save their own before they're ever going to save us. And there has been a lot of instances where they have saved our people. Absolutely have saved our people. And I'm one of them. But I had a gentleman in Michigan that was going to kidnap me and put me in a cage out in the woods because then the Sasquatch would come in to save me. I can't tell you how quick I told them not to. Don't come in and save my ass. I will get out of it because they will put a bullet in yours. It's really that dangerous of a field at times. It starts out that everybody's just enjoying nature and we're enjoying the stick structures, which everybody, just FYI, don't mess with their structures. It pisses them off. Be in the area, look at them, enjoy them if you want to, but it's communication for them amongst each other and other clans. And things can go awry really quick. And then the government gets involved and, too much information. And then they're all over your back because certain information that they don't want out. They've gotten, I don't think they're as bad now as they used to be years ago, because I think there's so much information that's out there. The government's backed off a little bit. But certainly on certain aspects of them, they've gotten worse. But just the basic knowledge of them or having them around, we're watched constantly. I've had my phone tapped for, oh my God, so many years. And it's just crazy. And the limits that, there are no limits, the things that certain people, not everybody, because I've met some of the best people I've ever met in my life through this field. I really have. They're like family to me. And I'm so blessed to have them in my life. But there's some people that they don't care. All they care about is getting what they want. And it's like, they'll find these areas. The bad ones tend to go and hang off by themselves, and the good ones stay away from the bad ones. And the bad ones will go off farther away from us so that they don't have to interact with us because they hate us. And then people will know they're there and know that they're bad, and they'll go to those areas because they would rather have that bad experience than no experience at all. To begin with, the bad ones don't go by the laws. They don't play by rules. And if one of them wants you dead, there's nowhere on this planet you're going to go and survive it, because they're going to get you one way or another. And they go and they get away from us to avoid that contact, and then we go chasing after them and go into these areas that we know are bad, just so that we can, have that experience. But then what happens is it backfires, because now they work as a collective consciousness, which is why their people succeed and ours don't, because we don't, and we need to. And so they go in these areas where the bad ones are at, and now the bad ones know that you're chasing them down. That legacy is going to follow you everywhere. Your chances of a good, positive experience is really limited. And instead of getting a positive quality experience that will last you a lifetime and continue to grow and have more interaction, because if they like you, you're in like Flynn. Let them call the shots. Let them do it on their time, and they will continue to bless you with encounters. But you start playing with the bad ones just so that you can see something, because you don't have the patience to wait. And it can turn deadly really quick. And then you're marked with the bad ones, and the good ones don't want anything to do with you either. So you just kind of have to decide what you want. I've dealt with bad ones, not because I went after them. I've been sent to certain areas where bad ones were at, kind of like a peace talk thing. And I've dealt with some of the aggressive ones. And, it's not anything anybody wants. The one that went after me in Texas, I was only there because a friend of mine had asked me to help him set up a research site. We had no idea how aggressive they were till we got there. I told him prior to that I thought they were bad there, and he didn't believe me. He kept saying how good they were. And they could have killed all of us. I stood my ground when it bluff charged me, so he had time to get the kids in the car. But things can turn bad in a blink of an eye, and you're talking about abilities. And if you're working with a clan, or you're bothering a clan that uses those abilities, there's not going to be anything you can do. And they don't all use them. They all possess abilities. They don't all use them. It depends on that clan. Some are old school. They don't do anything more than mind speak or possibly cloaking, where others have the full arsenal. And that's where your zapping comes in. When they go to zap you, if you walk away from it, that's because they didn't want you to die. If they want to drop you dead, they can zap you and you are done. It depends how hard they do it, what their intent is with it. It could be just enough to make you sick to make you leave. The good ones, they don't want you dead. It goes against their laws. They're not allowed to kill us unless it's in self-defense. It's just, it comes down to learn their culture, learn their ways, learn what makes them tick, learn what is acceptable with them and what isn't, because their ways are not ours. They're just not. And, when I was a kid, I'll be the first to admit, I'm a big animal lover. When I was a little kid, I thought they were animals. They had fur. Or not, I'm sorry, take that back. They do not have fur. They have hair. They do not have fur. It is hair, just like we have hair. And so they're covered in hair. And I thought, oh, it's an animal. I'm an animal lover. That's all. I have enough animals, I could be a zoo. But they're not. And anybody that is around them for any length of time and actually has solid, good experiences with them will know this. They can read, they can write, they have an alphabet. They learn, they have a thought process. They don't do anything that would lead anybody to believe they're an animal. There are two groups. There are the ones that believe they're simply an animal out in the woods, and the ones that know that they're part human. And unfortunately, those two arenas don't mesh. And I had asked them before the Genome Project what they were, because people were just fighting constantly. And that's the other thing. I get on Facebook. I don't partake in any of the fighting and disagreement, because quite honestly, it's not worth my time. I know the truth about them because they've taught it to me. And it's not about listening to what other people say and them being right, because I go to the source. I do listen when people talk, and if I question it, I go to them and I ask them. And we have some really top-notch people in this field. We really do. but we don't allow them to speak. We don't allow anybody to hear them because it's so far out of the realm of possibilities because of what we've always been led to believe that nobody wants to hear them. And yes, we have some people that are frauds. I get that. I've dealt with them. I've had people call me a fraud. That's okay. I don't care. I have enough witnesses to everything that I talk about, everything I teach. I have so many witnesses that I don't worry about it. Like I said, people get on me too bad. I just go out in the woods and hang out with them. I'll go hang out with a Sasquatch and, I don't worry about it. But we do have some really top-notch people that have great information. And you don't have to I guess as the term goes, swallow the Kool-Aid, but at least open the mind to possibilities and do more research. Because the truth is out there. You just have to have a high enough frequency where you're going to allow yourself to accept it. Because it's there. It's always been there. They're coming out more and more. They're socializing more and more. I have a client that is now just turned into one of my dearest friends. And she goes out in the woods every day. And every photo she has, they're just all over in it. And it's very easy to see. And she's getting that interaction. I've made some of the best friends in my life in this field. And they're not believing all this because I tell it to them. I simply told them how to, handle the encounters and how to work towards getting contact. I can't force any of these things to have contact with anybody. I don't think anybody can. But you can do things in a certain manner that makes it more likely or makes it easier, but it all has to come from them. They have been so taught, and it's been so bred in them how deadly we are because we kill what we do not understand. Doesn't matter if it's a Sasquatch, a dogman, one of these other weird cryptids running around. I have a cryptid running through my woods, over here. I have no idea what this thing is, but it doesn't try to hurt anybody, so I don't, it's fine. But our type of people kill what they don't understand. The DNA proved exactly what they had already told me. When I went into working on the genome project, I didn't even know what was going on. That's how out of the loop I am because I don't deal with all the fighting and the carrying on and all the chaos of both camps fighting and arguing. I deal with the cryptids, I deal with the ETs, and I help the people that want to find the truth and want to know it. And the rest I just kind of black out. And so, people, they just have to be open to the learning aspect. We don't know everything. And when I first got on the genome project, I didn't know anything. I didn't even know the project was happening to begin with. I found out about it because of them. And they wanted me to find the woman with the golden hair because she knew the truth. They didn't even have her name. They just were trying to describe her to me. I found somebody that I was talking to who was a friend of mine, and she said, "Oh, I know what you're talking about. That's Dr. Melba Ketchum. She's got the Sasquatch Genome Project." I had no idea. I don't get involved in a lot of that stuff. I'm too busy with them. And so I got a message to her that, for whatever reason, I'm supposed to help you. Don't know anything about science, not a scientist. I just know I'm supposed to help you. So she contacted me. I did a lot of bookwork for her, scheduling, phone communication for different things, and I helped her. And I am helping her again now because we have the Cryptid Genome Project where we're doing dogman samples and things. And she asked me one day, she said, "You're the only one that never asked me what the results are." I said, "It doesn't matter what your results are because they already told me what they are, and they said you got it right. There's no reason to ask you. If you want to tell me, I'm more than happy to listen, but I'm just telling you, this is what they told me." And she did get it right. People don't realize how human these things are. Have them around you all the time. Watch and see the things that they do. It's absolutely incredible. And their emotions are so strong because of that higher frequency. I had one come up to me in my front yard and he put his hand on my elbow. And they do what they call trancing. When they trance you, your mind is very active, but your body you're not frozen. Your body just doesn't respond. But your mind's fully active and you're aware things are going on. And he actually came up to me and he put a hand on my elbow. I can still remember, he had long red hair. remember feeling his hair as it went across my wrist. And he had come because he asked me to do some things, which I did. But every interaction you have with them, it's like the first time every single time. The thrill never goes away. You know, I mean, I've fought to protect them from different people and keep people out of their areas so that no harm happened to anybody my whole life. You know, now I teach people, and I don't know everything. I am not an expert. Again, not an expert. But what I do know, now I teach other people. So that when they have these experiences, it can be a pleasant one. Doesn't mean there aren't bad ones out there. We have to be honest and say that, yes, there are, just like we have bad people too. So do they. They are a person. I hear a lot of talk about, you know, they kill all these dogs. I have 13 dogs. A normal at my house is they go into the backyard with the dogs and play. I've literally let my dogs outside and walked outside and had one holding a dog. They've never hurt my animals ever. But now if you have dogs running out in the woods and they're chasing them and their children and they're barking and they're snarling and biting at them and growling at them, they're going to react. They absolutely are. But if you take that same situation and your child was outside and a stray dog that's feral came running up, growling and jumping at your child, there's nothing you will not do to protect your kid. It's not any different with them. And there are some, you know, we have people that are abusive to dogs. I had an animal rescue. I have a dog I've had for 6 years now that was abused to the point that this dog can't handle contact from another human being except myself. He won't even bark. The vet doesn't even know how he lived. He had so many injuries from what these people did to him. You know, so we have people in our community that are horrible to animals as well. We can't expect any less from them. You know, they use all the animals in the woods as pets. That's why you notice a lot of people that are out in the woods looking for the Sasquatch. You find a lot of blackbirds, ravens, hawks, or whatever circling above. They send them to watch their watchers. They send them in to watch us, and then they report back. Oh. They'll do that with the raccoons. They've done possums. I mean, the stories I could tell you, I could go on for days. I've watched all this. And then I've gone out in the woods that they've been out there, and then all of a sudden a deer walks up to me. How many times does a wild deer walk up to you where you're standing right next to it where you could touch it? Like, that's not normal. And then all of a sudden it would stop and turn its head back in the direction that they were at and trot off that way. And yet they eat the deer. You know, they put them in this trance. They can use mind control on them. But they will use coyotes, especially coyotes, wolves, raccoons, whatever is out there in the woods, bobcats. They will use them as pets. I have a group of 3 that come through here about once every 3 or 4 months. They have a cougar. You know, I mean, lots of people have noticed them with animals in the woods. You know, a lot of them will get these feral dogs and domesticate them, and they have pets. They really and truly are just, they're not that much different than us. They have a different way of doing things.
The connection between them and animals is really fascinating. It comes up every once in a while, but there's something that I've been wanting to ask you for a little bit. You mentioned earlier about remote viewing. How does that come into play, and how is that used by someone like you who's a Sasquatch experiencer?
The remote viewing, I do it for a lot of different reasons, not always Sasquatch related. I have helped in missing person cases, you know, and that kind of thing. And a lot of times, if I know someone well enough, I don't just do this for everybody because I want to make sure I never put the Sasquatch in a position where they have to defend themselves. Okay, so people that I know well, and I've worked with them in this field for a long period of time, will call me and say, okay, you know, I'm out here, which way are they at? Can you see them? So then I can remote view, I can find out where they're at. And I've not been proven yet that where I told them they were at, they weren't. And it just helps them get some communication going. Cryptid Wilderness, the podcast, Daniel is a very, very dear friend. Love him to pieces. I'm part of the crew for the Cryptid Wilderness. And he'll go out, you know, and I'll remote view for him. And I'll be like, okay, you've got wild hogs over here. You've got a rattlesnake coming over this way. And generally, I'm pretty much right on the money with it. I don't do it all the time. I do it when it's needed. If I have one of my dogs, because I keep my dogs, they have a very large backyard that's fenced in. I keep it fenced at all times for them. But occasionally, somebody digs under a fence or whatever. And if they get out, I'll remote view it so I can find out where they're at and go get them. So, but it is helpful with if for the people that are doing the research or just wanting that contact, because I can take a look at the area remotely and say, okay, looks like they're coming in on this side, and I usually start out and say, okay, do you have this, and this is in your backyard? And they're like, yeah, how do you know that? And I'm like, well, because I just remote viewed it. I don't do it all the time. I can, but I don't want to be intrusive. I don't want to bother anybody. So it's usually if somebody's asked me to do it that I will. I had a friend one time and had asked me, he said, I think there's something in the backyard. And I said, yeah. And then I found where it was at, the Sasquatch was at. And then, of course, I mind speak. And he's like, well, I was up on the porch by the window and da-da-da-da. And I described the porch to this person. I'd never been to his house. It was like, oh my God, this is too creepy. But yeah, so it is helpful. It is helpful as far as to watch the surroundings. There have been times when I've been at home where I'll get mind speak. And we actually had a situation where someone had seen one up the road. We had a swamp up the road, or we do have one. And there were 3 men down there with guns. And there was a Sasquatch that was out at the back of the swamp, and they had seen him. And he had mind spoke to me. He was in trouble. And I said, but he didn't see where he was at. So I remote viewed, was able to locate him and saw what was going on. So I got in the car and went down there, and, I kept them busy long enough where he got out of there. So it is helpful. And, I've had another situation where the South Carolina are just barbaric when they deer hunt. They cut hounds loose to run the deer, which I'm born and raised in Michigan. We do not run deer. That is like taboo. You do not sick dogs on deer until you run them into the ground. Here they do that quite frequently. And the dogs had actually come up on a very young Sasquatch. And it was a little girl. And she was in trouble, and they contacted me. So I was able to remote view, see the situation. And then I went over there and I got it stopped, and they got her away. So it just depends on the situation. But yeah, it does come in handy sometimes. I'm careful who I do it for.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like that would be a thing where you want to be really careful about, getting getting certain information to the wrong people. So it's pretty smart. And you do it the way you do.
I'm highly, highly protective. And even the people that I work with, I always tell everybody I'm the safety police. They'll say, well, I'm going to do this, this, and this. And I'm like, okay, before you do that, you got to learn how to do this, this, and this, because I'm safety police woman and you need to do this first. Know your energy signatures before you're talking to things. If you don't know how to read energy signatures, then we're going to work on that first, because anything can tell you it's whatever it wants you to know. Doesn't mean it's good. Energy signatures don't lie. So that way, regardless of what it tells you, you can determine what it is, if it's safe or whatever. So we do a lot of that. And, as far as the remote viewing, I don't mind remote viewing at all. I've always done it. I didn't, a lot of the stuff I've done since I was a little kid, I didn't, again, know that not everybody did it. But I am very cautious with who I do it for. And, I would rather tell somebody I can't do it so they'll leave me alone than say, okay, I can, but I'm not going to do it for you. I would never want to hurt anybody's feelings. But if I don't know for certain that they are safe, when I was in Michigan, I had 10 acres, and they would walk around uncloaked on my property all day long. That was a normal thing. Look outside and you see, one of the Bigfoot kids walking across the yard. And so I was so careful there. My kids could have friends over, but I would alert the Sasquatch before they came and say, everybody stay back. There was a few friends that I knew they were safe, and then they were able to see them as well. There was 4 researchers I would let there. That was it. I've been protecting them as long as I can remember, and they have protected me as well. Does that mean I can count on protection all the time? Absolutely not, because if it comes down to their safety or mine, they're going to take care of their people first, and that's how it should be. But they're amazing. I think I look at the things that have gone on in my life with them and with all the cryptids. You know, I get along well with the dogmen. I've dealt with bad dogmen, but for the most part, the ones that I interact with have been really good. They're different than a Sasquatch. You know, you have to understand their culture is different than them, and you have to flip over to that. But I've had death threats. I've been followed. I've had my brakes cut. I've had the lug nuts taken out of my car. I've had my bank accounts frozen. I've had kidnapping attempts. I've had all these things happen. And there were witnesses to all these things. You know, like 99.9% of the things that I talk about, I have witnesses to. If it was just I was the only one that knew it was going on, and I was the only one it ever happened to, and I was alone, then I would think that there's something wrong with me. But I've got too many witnesses, and I can't be perfectly normal and a mom and a grandma and a friend and all these other things. And then this is the only part of my life that I'm crazy. And I'm not. When I went through a divorce years ago, and he was very well aware of the Sasquatch. They were around all the time. They hated him. Every time he came near me, they would throw rocks from the woods to try to hit him, because he was not a kind person. And so when we split, his way to get back at me was he called the state and said, "Oh, she's crazy. She's this, she's that. She's talking to Bigfoot, and my kids are there." And they came out, they interviewed the kids, interviewed me, and said, "You know what? Now I believe you. Like, I didn't believe in this stuff before. I believe it now." And I'm like, "Well, thanks." And so to prove a point, I contacted a psychiatrist. I said, "I don't think I'm crazy. I think I'm perfectly fine, but just I wanted it documented for him, because that was his big thing to get back at me for divorcing him." And even the doctor said, "There's nothing wrong with you." Like, I talked to him and he said, "You've got me convinced." I said, "Would you like to see the photos?" And he said, "Yeah." So I opened my phone and showed him the photos. He was blown away.
Wow.
So I don't, when people sit there and say, "Oh, you're crazy," that's fine. Call me crazy. I don't care, because it's not going to change the fact that I've had these amazing, beautiful experiences. I've had some terrifying ones. Absolutely. Oh, yeah. But for the most part, I'm blessed. I really am. And this field of research, even though I don't consider myself a researcher, I have people that have honored me and let me come into their lives and work with them on this stuff. And I will be forever humbled by that. I always tell them, you guys give me more than I give you, because they have turned out to be some of the best people I've ever met. And they're just such a blessing. But this whole thing is, you get to be part of something that's bigger than yourself. And people don't realize that. It's not about us. It's like with me and the cryptids, it's never been about me. I don't need it to be about me. It's about them. It's about the truth.
Absolutely.
And I don't need it to be about me. I don't care if anybody knows my name or not. Like, even on Facebook, very seldom do you see me even post on Facebook. I don't need a name. I need them to be able to survive and have a quality of life. I need people to be able to interact when they have these interactions and be safe. And I need people to realize the ones that are dangerous, stay the hell away from them and quit going out there and thinking if you piss them off, you'll at least get interaction, because you can end up dead that way. I want them safe, and I want our people safe. That's what I need. I don't care if anybody knows my name. It's like I am assistant manager for the Nebraska Bigfoot Conference. And we have such a wonderful time. And I have people that are my regulars that will come in to see me every year there. It's never been about me. It's never going to be about me. And like right now, even your show, I'm doing podcasts and things. And I just filmed for the Flash of Beauty sequels. And I've done, one with Jason Kenzie. And I feel very blessed and honored to have been part of it. I'm only doing it because they came to me 6 years ago and said, make people aware of us and make sure they know the truth. As soon as they tell me to stop, I'm done and I'm disappearing again. Because I disappeared for over 40 years and I was good at that. Because it's never been about me personally. It's always been about them. I'm just happy with the interaction. But they wanted people to know the truth. And so now when I get asked, there's been a few shows that they flat out said, we don't want you there. They're Occam, which means bad in their language. And those people are Occam. Don't go there. They're Occam. I'm
the
okay,
Sasquatch.
It's their information.
They told you not to go on.
Yeah.
Whoa, wow. Wow.
Yeah, and so it's their information. This is not about me. This is about them and where they want the information out at. So there's been a couple of shows that I've actually turned down because of that. If they're not comfortable with their information there, it's not up to me. But they know how to read people's intent. They know your intent and your mental state and your heart better than you will ever know it.
Absolutely.
They're like a lie detector. It's like people will go out and tell me, they're like, yeah, I'm like, do you take a gun out with you in the woods? Well, yeah, I've got a gun, but it's not for them. I said, okay, did you tell them that you had it? Like when you walked into the woods, did you let them know you had it? Let them know your intent was it's not for them. No, they'll never know I have it. Are you kidding me? They know before you've left your driveway at your house that you have it. They are telepathic. They have telekinesis abilities. I'm telling you, they know. So when you go out, and there's nothing wrong with taking a weapon. There's things out in the woods that can hurt you. They're a bear, they're a cougar, they're a bobcat. I mean, there's anything. So there's nothing wrong with that. But when you go out there, whether you talk verbally or you talk in your mind, when you talk in your mind, they can hear you. It doesn't matter if you're getting it back and you can pick it up. They are. Be honest. I'm going out there. I'm taking this weapon with me. Please know it's not to hurt you or any of your people. It's there to protect me from predators that wish to harm me. They already know that. But when you go ahead and you tell them that, it solidifies you as being an honest human, because most of our people aren't. That's why it's so inbred in them. Hairless humans are dangerous because we kill what we don't understand.
Robin, this conversation has been absolutely fascinating. As we start to kind of wind down, I'm going to ask one more question. And this just...
You can ask anything.
This just came into mind. This is not on the sheet. Have you ever, you've mentioned mind speak a few times. Have there been situations where, or maybe you've heard of this, where, you've been getting communication pretty regularly, and then maybe it'll stop for a certain period of time, and then it'll start up again after,
Oh, sure.
however, is that a kind of normal thing?
Yeah, people, they panic, and I get a lot of calls on that. And they're like, I'm not getting mind speak. I'm not getting visuals. I'm not getting tapping on my windows. What people need to understand is these are a type of human. They do have things that go on in their lives. They have work that they do. I mean, they don't have jobs like we do, obviously, but they do have things that go on. They do have meetings. They do have training. I had some of the members in my group in Michigan were gone for 8 months. And when you are used to feeling that energy and that frequency from them every day, and they disappear, you go through withdrawals, I'm telling you. And it was devastating, but of course they came back when they were done. But the same thing goes on with the mind speak. And like normally, I'll get it various times of the day. They've woken me out of a sound sleep because they literally have no concept of what's important to us. It's only what's important to them. So they'll wake me out of a sound sleep to tell me something that really could have waited till morning. But there's times that, a few days will go by and you're worried, something's happened. I'll do a remote view and see if anybody's in trouble around, or I will mentally, through mind speak say, okay, is everybody okay? It's awful quiet. And generally when that happens, I'll get one that I don't talk to all the time, and they'll say, yeah, but they've gone here, they've gone there. So it's perfectly normal. They will come back. Doesn't mean they're going to be back in 24 hours or less. Means that they will be back.
Right.
And you can always put that out there to them. But please, if you're starting to learn the mind speak and you don't know how to read the energy signatures, always start out with, I only want to speak to the ones that have a pure heart. Because you don't want to invite the bad stuff in. And the bad stuff is going to find you anyway. But some of the bad stuff requires permission. Not all of it, but it is helpful if you say, if you have a pure of heart, if you have good intent and you wish to speak to me, please do. Announce yourself when you're going into their woods. When you leave your front door, you are now in their world. And so when you're going out in the woods like that, mentally speak to them and say, hey, I'm here. I'm with pure heart. I'm not here for any ill intentions. Anybody that wants to interact with me can, as long as you have a pure heart. Make sure that intent's out there so you don't get anything unwanted You might still, but it lowers the chances of it. But it is very normal to get a lot of mind speak and then have lulls in it. Just like it's very normal if you have a lot of activity around your home and you're used to it, whether they're, leaving stick glyphs on the ground for you, or, you put a couple toys out and they're moving the toys around and all of a sudden it goes dead quiet. You guys don't panic. Okay. They do not migrate. For the love of God, people, they do not migrate. I get asked that a million times. They don't, but they will travel, and they don't do it, like in the animal world. We have a lot that migrate to certain, like geese, they'll go south for the winter. It's not that type of a thing. They will send scouts that are hunters for that clan to areas where the food is more plentiful. If they're in an area where it's not, the rest of the clan will stay back. They store food and vegetables and medicinal herbs and things all year long to get them stored up to go through winter. So they can get in their caves, underground, above ground, these old farmhouses or barns that are out in no man's land that nobody's into. They'll hold up in there and they'll be set for the entire winter. They don't have to necessarily be out. It doesn't mean they're gone. They will send scouts out to an area that has food. It's like people see them in Pikes Peak in Colorado. They follow the elk herds. Of course they're going to. The elk gather together to go up Pikes Peak. Every year they do it. So of course they're going to have the hunters for different clans will be there and peg them off and take them back. That doesn't mean the whole clan's going. I do know of a couple clans that they have two places that they reside in, and when the food sources get low in the one area, they'll go to the next area and stay there for several months. And then when that dies down, they'll go back to the main one. But they are not migrating. They are not a migratory thing. They're also not nocturnal. They're out at night only because we aren't. And a lot of your wildlife that they would hunt is active at night. I have had more sightings during the day than I have ever had at night. Doesn't mean they're not out there at night. They show up in my backyard on a regular basis at night because they wait for my dogs to go out at night, and they'll toss sticks into the fence, so then the dogs play with that. I had one that did a belly crawl across my backyard one night, and the dogs were playing with it. It was crazy. But they really and truly, they are not nocturnal. Nighttime, the big draw for them at night is because deer are more active at night. Other animals that they would eat are more active. They can get into the lakes and get fish easier because there's nobody around. It's a time of day that there's much less humans out than during the day. But don't mistake that to think that they're nocturnal, because they absolutely are not. I know some that literally by 11 o'clock, they're ready to go back home and lay down like everybody else does. I've had so many sightings during the day, it's ridiculous. I've had more during the day than at night. And I've had them come right up. People go out at night a lot, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm like, I'll go out with you, but you can see more of them moving around during the day because then it's daylight. But I've gone up at night and had them walk right up behind me. And my hair is relatively thick. And for whatever reason, they like my hair, and they'll come up right behind me and they're patting my hair. And years ago, when I lived in Michigan, I had my bed right by my window. If I moved my bed away from the window, they would scream and holler and pound on the walls all night long. So I kept my bed right next to the window so they could see in. I never put curtains up. I've always lived in the woods. I don't have to worry about peeping toms other than them. And if I don't have the curtains on, I can watch them outside at night. But I always cracked my window open because I like the fresh air. And I'd wake up in the morning and I'd have bud and leaves braided into my hair every night.
Really?
I don't even know how they did
wow.
it. Oh yeah, it was a riot. I would get little toys and I'd put them on the windowsill. And when you gift things, if you're putting like rocks, feathers, toys, whatever, don't put a lot out at one time because it overstimulates them and they think it's a trap. So limit it to like just a couple things, because otherwise if it's too much, they're concerned. So I would put a couple things on my windowsill, and every morning I'd wake up, I'd have leaves in my hair, mud in my hair, muddy handprints on the windowsill, and the toys would be gone. And it was really hot one year, so I put a window air conditioner in that window, and I thought this is not going to go well because they're not going to be able to see in very well. The only thing that I can think of is they had to have done a trance on me during the night, because I never heard a thing. I never woke up during the night. And I got up the next morning, the air conditioner was out of the window, and I found it mangled in the woods. And I was like, okay, we don't want anything in the window.
Absolutely.
And then they were back to being happy. But they would tap on that window every night about 2 a.m. and I would hear them talking outside. And so I would get up and I'd go out in my pajamas and my slippers and I'd go out and sit in the woods with them. I did that every night for years. That particular clan, it was safe. I wouldn't do that with all clans. That particular clan, they were really well behaved. And we had one that wasn't part of that clan that showed up one day during the day. And they were the ones that alerted me that it was there and that he was not nice, as they put it. And they wanted me to go to the house. Take my kids, get in the house. So we went in the house, and all you saw from one side of my yard to the other side of the yard were rocks being thrown back and forth. And that went on for about 20, 30 minutes, and then everything was calm, and he was never around again. So they ran him out. But, yeah, it comes down to learn. If you really want to be a part of their world, you have to learn about it. You cannot do things with them and interact with them based on how we perceive things and how we do things, because it's completely different. And that's really the biggest key to getting along with them. You have to look at things from their perspective, not ours, because they look at things differently. Our words being different for them. Their laws are different from ours. What they consider an okay thing is not what we consider okay. And until you become, and I don't know everything about them. They're only going to tell me so much. I mean, I'm still learning. It's a progression. What you know today, you will not know tomorrow. You'll know more. It never stops from the time you're little on up. And so it's learn about them, understand their ways, because they are not going to change who and what they are. If you want that contact, if you want to be able to live in a space that they may wander in and out, they don't live on my property. They come to my property. It's like the ones here in South Carolina, I don't put food out for them. They don't take it. They're happy by the gesture. They get very excited about the gesture. And they have asked for certain things a couple of times, and I have given it to them when they have. But the ones in Michigan, I was by myself. I was not working with other researchers. I didn't know other researchers. So I was feeding them like $200 worth of food every week. And I never thought about ramifications. Now, I was very fortunate. That group were so good and so kind. I literally could do anything with them. They were so good. But it's not like that all around. And when you put food out on a regular basis and they start to expect it, they want more and they want more and they want more. And I know of several situations where they've gotten violent with people if the people stopped, because now they're planning on it. You're never going to feed them enough to fill everybody. That's not possible. So if you're going to gift food, do it on a regular basis. Don't make it a regular pattern. Don't give huge amounts. I mean, I did it. I didn't know not to do it. I didn't have anybody to guide me. My group was very good. And when I did stop right before I moved from there, I didn't get any kickback from it other than a couple yells. But I didn't have problems. But I know a lot of people that have had issues. So there's nothing wrong with leaving a bag of apples or a jar of peanut butter. There's nothing wrong with that. Just do it now and then. Don't make it at the same times every single day and the same thing, because then they begin to expect it. And just like a little kid that wants that, that extra cookie or whatever that night before bed, and you have to tell it no, you're talking about telling something no that weighs over 1,000 pounds, has abilities that you can't even begin to understand, and can literally pick up a car and toss it over the highest tree you can find. That is not somebody you want ticked. So, if you're putting things out, it's okay. Just not every day, occasionally, just don't make it repetitive. Like if you're going to a national park or whatever, and you want to gift them something when you come out, there's nothing wrong with that. But like if you're doing it at your home, just use good judgment. Don't make it an every night thing. Make it 2 or 3 times a week. Or if you are doing it every night, skip a night now and then, so that they know that don't depend on it, because they can get agitated, because that becomes part of their food source. You're not going to be able to feed them enough to sustain them anyway. But they get dependent on it. It's like if you go to the grocery store and all of a sudden all the food's gone at the grocery store, you're not too happy.
Exactly. I think that's really wise advice. That's something that comes up a lot on this show is people aren't aware of what they could be getting themselves into. So I'm glad glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Just so they're aware of what could happen.
Right. And there's a lot of things. And that's what I mean by, there's nothing wrong with being in this field of research. If you want to be a researcher, I applaud it. And I'm not saying everything I do is right. I'm learning just like everybody else. I make mistakes like everybody else does. I'm far from perfect. But what I will say is, if you're going to be in this field, learn about them. Learn what really is the truth about them, whether it's something that's easy for you to accept or not. Open your mind and at least think of the possibilities. You don't have to believe all of it. That's okay, because a lot of it's going to come when you actually see it. But you're not going to get to that level where you get to experience it if your frequency is too low. And if you don't know how to be around them, not that there has to be a certain way, but as far as knowing the background on them, knowing what makes them tick, knowing about their culture, what they like, what they don't like, how you can behave, how you can't behave. It's just like the people that are so scared when they're waving their arms at them. I don't blame them for being scared. It would be scary to see something that looks like that waving their arms at them. I totally understand why they're scared. But the background on that is that they aren't necessarily doing that to hurt you. They're trying to turn you around from the path that you're going on. And they're trying to get you to move away, whether it's their children and their families are there. There could be another predator there. They could be teaching their kids to hunt. And, that's another thing. And I just went over this on Dave Scott's show, Spaced Out Radio, a few weeks ago. Now is the time of year that the moms have got the babies out that they had during the summer, and they're getting food ready for winter. So a lot of altercations happen. A lot of accidental meetings happen. Be mindful of it. Know that they are more active right now. They're trying to get ready for winter, and their children are out more than ever. I was, talking to one the other day, and I said, I told them on the show that they need to be careful because you guys have kids out and you're getting ready for winter. And one of them said, yeah, but we teach, the kids, the younger kids are teaching them how to hunt. I had someone that I knew quite well that used to go to a friend of his that had cabins, and he stayed in the same cabin all the time. And he went there for the weekend, and he got there late at night, and he knew the Sasquatch were in there, and he got there later than planned. And what he had done was walk right into a situation where there's two adults that were teaching a child how to hunt. So he went to go step foot in that cabin, and they didn't want him out because one of the kids were there. And they were rocking that cabin and pounding on the walls and everything. They had no intention of hurting him, but they had every intention of scaring him so that he couldn't get out because the child was there. Well, all he thought about was the fact that he was terrified. And in his mind, I'm sure he thought they could kill him. That would be the logical thing for our people to think. But the logical thing on their end was never to hurt. It was to keep him penned up inside that cabin so they could finish doing what they were doing with the child. So it comes from two different ways. And while we don't always understand why they do the things they do, because we're not them, it is helpful if we try to learn a little bit about them and about the culture and their way of life, what their expectations are, some of the things that they do, why they do it. It doesn't have to make sense to us because it makes sense to them.
Robin, thank you so much for coming on. You've shared so many just incredible things, and I appreciate you coming on. Are there ways, I'm sure there might be a few people that might want to reach out to you. Is there a way people can contact you directly?
Yeah, you can get hold of me on Facebook under Robin Haynes, Haynes. There's another account that's Robin L. Haynes. Please don't use it. I started that account and I had problems with it from the get-go, so I don't even go on that. The one that says Robin Haynes, you can reach me that way. For anybody that wants any services from me, you can reach me at www.paranormal-empowerment.com. That's my website where you can book sessions and that kind of thing. But if you just have a question or something, you're more than welcome to reach me on Facebook.
Fantastic. Well, I think we'll definitely be in touch over the next few years. But thank you again, Robin, for coming on. Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed. Share the show with a friend. Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com or pass on my email. Here's the list. If you've had any encounters in Oregon, which I'm sure there's probably a few of you out there, please feel free to reach out immediately. You can use email bigfootsociety@gmail.com. A special thank you to all the Bigfoot Society Patreon and YouTube channel members. It's your support that helps keep the show going, and I extremely appreciate it. If you want to join in the fun, you can join over at patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society. I'll see you there. And again, thanks for listening.
Her and I can get on here and we can tell our stories. Maybe there's somebody else out there listening that's too afraid to tell their story. Maybe this will give them the courage to come out and not feel so bad about it. Who cares what anybody thinks? I know what I saw. I know what's out there. That's all I care about.
Let people know. Please let them know. If you ever see one of these things, you need to tell. Because if you don't, then shame on you. You know? Shame on you.